So what I've already really talked about with the core and the spine, or the spinal muscles that we just worked on, what I really want you to understand is that to keep these both strong, so this congruency between the strength of the front and the strength of the back, it helps not only stabilize through the spine, but also keep this integrity through that sort of trunk and core region, which is going to allow the limbs to be freely able to be moved around that. So sometimes if we're weak in the stabilizer section, so we're weak through our transverse abdominis, we're weak through the pelvic floor, we're weak through the rectus spinae, the shoulder muscles will become really tight, the glutes will become really tight because they try to act as stabilizers then. And that can lead to pain, it can lead to stiffness, it can lead to instability, it can lead to other issues where we're not utilizing the body as a whole. However, if we use our yoga practice really effectively and efficiently, we can help cue our students to really build on these muscles so that they leave their practice with length through their spine, strength through their core, and stability through their body. So how do we do that? Some tips to help move the core in our yoga practice is that, remember, we can get really weak in our obliques. So really weak in the internal and the external obliques. So anytime you're coming into a twist, especially if it's a more powerful class rather than just like a seated spinal twist, I want you to think about how can I really get my students to engage through their obliques. So you might be coming into or cueing them to come from something like a high lunge to a revolve lunge. If they're not aware, and in fact, if you're not aware that your obliques do a lot of this rotation and stability through the torso, through the core, we may not cue there, we may not encourage the students to feel it there. And in fact, what they're probably going to do is they're probably going to come into something like high lunge, they're going to revolve around, but they're really going to use their arms to like yank themselves around. And all I'm really doing there is using my arm and really deeply twisting through my spine. Okay. However, if I tell the students we want to feel this through the core, we want to move super slow, what they can do is we can make them rotate, and then you can make them hover here. You can tell them we want to feel this through their obliques on the right and the left. You make them hover and hold without touching the elbow down, and then they can place their elbow and their arm down. So it's just going to allow for a stronger practice through their obliques. It may be a posture and a sequence you already did, but just by a few little changes, you can help create more strength through the obliques and a safer, stronger practice. Remember that also anything we strengthen, we have to lengthen and soften. So often we're holding so much tension through the belly that I want you to encourage your students to also let it soften. Let the breath soften, let their rectus abdominis soften, their obliques, their transverse abdominis. Let it lengthen and let it go. So how can you do this? It might feel weird for the student to just really relax through their belly when where they're seated or they're standing. But what you can do is in something like a wide leg forward fold, coming towards the end of the class, you can encourage the students to just really soften their belly there, especially if you've done a strong vinyasa practice through the core, done lots of rotation, lots of stabilizing. We want to make sure that they're able to let it go as well. Another way that you can do that is even in, say, child's pose, where their belly is facing down. They might feel more comfortable and more safe, where they can bring the knees aside, their feet together, and then really let their belly soften here. Another pose that we do so often, especially in our vinyasa practice, is cat-cow. So this way and that way. So cat and cow. It's often at the start of the class, so you're often just warming up and you're getting your students to, feel through their hands maybe move through their spine, maybe move a little bit side to side and move through their hips. But what I already want you to start to do is to tell them when you're dropping the belly forward, you really should be lengthening that rectus abdominis. So you can encourage them to feel that length all the way from the xiphoid process to the pubic bone. And that's strengthening in the erector spinae. So tell them already from here, we want to be able to feel switch on through the multifidus, the erector spinae, the chondroitus lumborum. Obviously, you don't need to tell them those exact muscles, but say, you know, we want to be feeling some strengthening through the back of the spine, all the way from the head, all the way down to the tailbone. So that extension's happening then. And then in the reverse, we want to say, let's start to actually switch on through the core here. So when you tuck down, can you really think about drawing that pubic bone towards the sternum, maybe even tucking the toes, lifting the knees up. And as a result as well, you're creating that length through the erector spinae. So if we get them to do that switching on, switching off, erector spinae, as well as the abdominals, in something like cat-cow, when they're a little bit fatiguing in their class or they're coming towards the stronger part of the class, they've already switched it on at a really early phase of the class, and perhaps those muscle fibers are like, yeah, I know how to do that. I can switch on for you and I can switch off for you. So remembering that the rectus abdominis comes from the xiphoid process, the ribs, all the way down to the pubic bone, and the transverse abdominis is from these lower ribs and wrap all the way around towards the thoracolumbar fascia at the back. When you're in a pose such as upward and downward facing dog, this is actually working. Your rectus spinae is working, your rectus abdominis, your transverse abdominis, they all should be working, but we never cue them. All we're doing is cueing to press the hips down or press the hands away, but we're forgetting about something that can really change the practice here. So what I want you to do is I'll do maybe a round or two, I'll speak through it, and then maybe even you try it, what I'm going to encourage in that sort of transition from upward facing dog to downward facing dog. Okay, so from something like a plank position, you've come forward, you're coming all the way down, and then you're coming over your toes. And what I want you to feel is that length through your rectus abdominis and that contraction through your rector spinae. As I press down into the ground, I'm initially going to create this round through my mid back and this engagement through my rectus abdominis. So what I'm actually doing in that rounding, I'm actually bringing my xiphoid process closer to my pubic bone. And I should feel this through my rectus abdominis rather than my hands or rather than just feel it in my mid back. We still want to feel it in the mid back. We don't want to feel it in the hands. But how can I really switch on through here and encourage the students to, so that every time they're coming through chaturanga, they're utilizing the rectus abdominis and the transverse abdominis. So it's that coming down, and then it's that up, then it's the round first. Think about drawing the pubic bone all the way towards the sternum and coming all the way over. That whole time I didn't feel it all through my hands and I just felt it through my core. So try that, maybe do that a few times and see how it feels for you. How can we make the spine or the erector spinae and the multifidi and the quadratus lumborum also really strong in a practice? Two things that I'm going to teach you. One is mix up your chaturangas. So mix up your upward dog, your shalabhasana, your cobra. So we're constantly switching on through different parts of the muscles rather than just pressing our hands down and coming up into upward facing dog. So what I'll get my students to do is they'll come all the way down onto the ground, and rather than just press up into up dog, can I get them to lift their arms? Can I really get them to strengthen through here? Maybe I'll do a few rounds of this. Arms forward, arms back, really lift up. And so they're starting to build some posterior strength rather than just pressing their hands down to the ground and doing this. Because I tell you what, it's not as strong unless it's done very well, and it's an upward facing dog is done extremely well. So you're probably teaching in class and you're probably thinking maybe one or two of them actually back strengthening. Most of them are probably just hanging out in their wrists and pushing their hips forward and potentially compressing their lumbosacral junction or their lower back. So get them to lower down, mix up their extension, really feel that lift off. And once they build that strength in something like when they're on their belly, they're going to be able to build into a stronger upward facing dog. The other thing that I see done very commonly that I think could be done better and stronger for the spine is a halfway lift. So in a sun salutation, when someone reaches the arms up and then they come down, what I see with a halfway lift is I see them come down and then I see this, and then this, and then this. So they don't often want to really lift up, actually engage the erector spinae, actually lift up, or their multifidus, and do a halfway lift. So they don't want to take their hands off the ground. Maybe it's for aesthetics. Maybe they think, you know, I want to really look long in my spine. But what I actually encourage my students to do is bring their hands onto their shins and really feel the engagement through here. They might even be able to float their arms behind them, like a little warrior 3 variation, really switching on through the erector spine and the multifidus, creating that extension, and then as they exhale, forward fold. So it's just a few little tips for you to do the same class that you're already doing, teach the same way, but just add a few little change of cues, maybe mix up the transitions, mix up the flow, tell the students to halfway lift, really make them hover in those rotations to switch on through their obliques. Those few little tweaks are going to make their practice stronger as well.